Langley, Virginia. November 2022. The Central Intelligence Agency quietly activated a new operational division. It was not announced in a press release. It did not require congressional approval. It was mentioned once, in a single paragraph buried inside an unclassified budget justification document submitted to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. The division was called the Open Source Enterprise. Its stated mission: to collect and analyze publicly available information from digital platforms. Publicly available. The phrase does the work. If you posted it, they can read it. And under this framework, reading it is not surveillance. It is intelligence collection. The document is public. It was submitted to Congress. It describes, in clinical bureaucratic language, a program that by 2024 was processing the social media activity of millions of American citizens. No warrant, no suspicion, no notification. The legal authority cited Executive Order 12,333, signed by Ronald Reagan in 1981. To understand what changed in 2022, you need to understand what existed before it. The government's relationship with social media platforms begins earlier than most people assume. Not with Snowden, not with 9/11. The infrastructure was built gradually, legally, and almost entirely in public view, in documents that nobody read because they were not written to be read. In 2011, the Department of Homeland Security began a pilot program to monitor social media platforms for what it called situational awareness during natural disasters and public emergencies. The program was called the Social Networking Monitoring Center. It was funded, it was staffed, it collected data. A 2012 FOIA request by the Electronic Privacy Information Center obtained the operational guidelines. The guidelines listed the terms the system was flagging. The list included Trojan, virus, cloud, team. It also included pork, snow, ice, wave. The program was monitoring every American who used those words on a public platform. The list ran to 377 terms. It was described in the document as a minimum necessary approach. Congress was informed. A hearing was held. The program was described by a DHS official as completely benign. No action was taken. The program continued. That was 2012. The infrastructure was in place. What changed in the following decade was scale. In December 2022, a journalist was given access to Twitter's internal records. What followed became known as the Twitter Files. The documents showed a sustained, structured relationship between Twitter's trust and safety teams and multiple federal agencies, including the FBI, the DHS, and the CIA's open source enterprise. Between 2020 and 2022, the FBI sent Twitter over 150 formal requests to remove or suppress specific accounts and content. The requests were processed through a dedicated portal, a portal that Twitter built specifically for this purpose at the FBI's request. The portal existed. It was operational. It processed requests within hours. Twitter was not alone. Meta received 43,000 government data requests in the first half of 2023 alone. This figure comes from Meta's own transparency report, published publicly. Google received 55,000. The requests were legal. They were processed. The users whose data was requested were not notified in the majority of cases. In August 2024, a partially declassified Inspector General report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence confirmed what the Twitter files had shown in fragments. The report found that between 2020 and 2023, at least 6 federal agencies had established formal channels with major social media platforms for the purpose of content flagging and user data collection. 6 agencies, formal channels, documented. The report also found that in a significant number of cases, the flagged accounts belonged to American citizens engaged in legal political speech. The report's recommendation: enhanced oversight mechanisms should be considered. No agency was sanctioned, no program was terminated, no user was notified. The recommendation remains under review. In 2023, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, was operating a program called the MDM Initiative. MDM: misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. The program's stated goal was to protect election integrity by identifying and suppressing false information online. The operational definition of malinformation, as written in the CISA framework document, which is publicly available, is information that is based on reality but used out of context to cause harm. Read that again. True information, used out of context, classified as a threat. The framework authorized flagging and suppression of content that was factually accurate. In 2023, a federal judge in Missouri issued a preliminary injunction ordering the Biden administration to stop communicating with social media platforms for the purpose of content moderation. The judge's ruling described the program as the most massive attack against free speech in United States history. The administration appealed. The Supreme Court ultimately ruled in 2024 that the plaintiffs lacked standing to sue. The program's legal status remains unresolved. Its operational status was never publicly confirmed as terminated. In parallel, the CIA's open-source enterprise was expanding. A 2024 budget document, obtained through a FOIA request by the nonprofit organization Just Security, revealed that the open-source enterprise had tripled its staffing between 2021 and 2024. It now employs more analysts dedicated to open-source digital collection than any other single CIA directorate. The document describes the collection targets in general terms: foreign influence operations, domestic amplification networks, and platform-based threat vectors. Domestic amplification networks. That phrase does not appear in any previous CIA public document. It does not have a published legal definition. It does not correspond to any statutory authority granted to the CIA, which is legally prohibited from conducting intelligence operations targeting American citizens on American soil. The phrase is in the document. The document is in the public record. No one in the agency has explained what it means. These are not allegations. These are not theories. Every document cited in this video is publicly available, government-issued, and verifiable. What they describe, collectively, is a surveillance architecture built incrementally, documented openly, and deployed at a scale that has no historical precedent in peacetime America. In the course of producing this documentary, we were able to locate one individual willing to speak on record. Her name is Dr. Sandra Okafor, former senior analyst, Department of Homeland Security Office of Intelligence and Analysis. She worked on social media monitoring programs from 2013 through 2021. She left the department voluntarily. Her clearance was not revoked. She agreed to speak under one condition: that we do not identify the specific programs she worked on beyond what is already in the public record. We agreed. What follows is her account, unedited, unabridged, in her own words.
I want to be clear about something before I say anything else. The people I worked with believed they were protecting the country. I believed that too, for a long time. I'm not here to characterize anyone's intentions. I'm here to describe what the system does, because I think the public has a right to understand what the system does. I started at DHS in 2013. My role was social media analysis, specifically identifying coordinated, inauthentic behavior on public platforms during periods of civil unrest. That was the mandate: coordination, inauthenticity, foreign interference. That's a real problem. It was a real problem then. I'm not disputing that. What I am saying is that the mandate did not stay that way. By 2016, the tooling had expanded significantly. We were no longer looking only for foreign actors. The query parameters had been broadened to include what was internally called domestic resonance mapping. That phrase meant who in the United States is amplifying foreign narratives, even if they don't know they're doing it. That sounds reasonable until you think about what it means operationally. It means you are building a profile on an American citizen who shared an article, who retweeted something, who expressed an opinion that happened to align with a foreign government's preferred narrative, without any contact with that foreign government, without any knowledge of it, without any intent. We were mapping those people: names, accounts, networks, reach. I asked about the legal framework for this at a team meeting in 2017. I was told it fell under the foreign intelligence exception because the original content had a foreign source. The American sharing it was characterized as part of the distribution chain, not as the target. That is a legal argument. I am not a lawyer, and I'm not going to litigate it here. What I will say is that by 2019 we had files, and I'm using that word deliberately, files on hundreds of thousands of American citizens who had never contacted a foreign government, never broken a law, and never been accused of anything. They had posted things online. The files were not called files. They were called influence network nodes, but they contained names, account identifiers, location data when available, posting history, and network maps showing who those people were connected to. When I left in 2021, I was told my access would be terminated and my non-disclosure agreement would remain in effect indefinitely. I am speaking now because a federal court filing in 2024, which is public record, confirmed the existence of the database I worked on under a different name than the one I knew it by. That tells me it continued after I left. That tells me it grew. I don't know how large it is now. What I know is that when I was there, the criteria for inclusion were broad enough to capture anyone who was politically active online, left or right. That part I want to be precise about. This was not ideological targeting. The system didn't care about your politics. It cared about your reach and your connections. If you had followers, you were interesting. If you were interesting, you had a file. I've thought a lot about whether I should have left sooner, whether I should have said something sooner. The honest answer is that I told myself what everyone in those buildings tells themselves, that the alternative is worse. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. What I believe now is that a program described as foreign threat detection had, by the time I left, become something that has no name in the public conversation because the public doesn't know it exists. It exists. The 2024 court filing is public. Anyone can read it. That's why I'm talking.
In 2024, the Supreme Court ruled in Murphy versus Missouri, a case brought by 2 states and several private individuals alleging that the federal government had coerced social media platforms into censoring lawful speech. The court ruled 6-3 that the plaintiffs lacked standing. The majority opinion did not address whether the government's conduct was constitutional. It addressed only whether these specific plaintiffs had been sufficiently harmed to bring the case. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, writing for the majority, acknowledged that some of the government's communications with platforms were, in her words, coercive in nature. The case was dismissed anyway. The programs were not enjoined. The platforms were not prohibited from cooperating. The database that Dr. Okafor described has not been confirmed or denied in any public government statement. In January 2025, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released its annual transparency report. The report disclosed the number of Americans whose communications were collected under foreign intelligence authorities. The number was 246,073. That is the number they disclosed. That figure covers only one specific legal authority. Section 702 of FISA. It does not cover open source collection. It does not cover the DHS social media programs. It does not cover what the CIA's open source enterprise collects under Executive Order 12,333. Those programs have no mandatory disclosure requirement. They do not appear in the transparency report. The 246,073 is the number they chose to show you. The 2024 Inspector General report that confirmed the six-agency social media monitoring framework recommended that a cross-agency working group be formed to review oversight procedures. The working group was formed in October 2024. It has not yet issued findings. Its meetings are classified. You have a social media account? You post? You share? You follow people whose views you find interesting. Under the framework described in these documents, that activity is collectible. Under the foreign intelligence exception, if any content you engage with originated abroad, your account is potentially within scope. Under the CISAMDM framework, if the information you share is true but deemed harmful, it is flaggable. You have not been charged with anything. You have not been contacted. You do not have the right to know if a file exists. The Open Source Enterprise Budget document is available through the Senate Intelligence Committee's Public Filing Archive. The DHS Social Networking Monitoring Center guidelines are available through EPIC, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, at epic.org. The ODNI Transparency Report is available at dni.gov. The 2024 Inspector General Report is available through the ODNIFOIA Reading Room. Anyone can read them. Draw your own conclusions.